Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2023 Fall FedEx RSM DFS Tactics Show. We have reached the conclusion of the 2023 calendar year and the shows for Calls. Don't worry, I will have a couple of shows in the off season, maybe one at the end of November and then in December to preview salary and all. But we have reached the end of the 2023 calendar year for wagers, for DFS, and all of that good stuff. So we have an exciting show lined up for you. We have a forecast to update. Of course, we have all of the projected ownerships, rankings, everything you need to dominate the final DFS slate for the PGA Tour season, the RSM. I'm excited, so let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. It's going to make you a much smarter golf DFS player. It's going to give you a big leg up on your golf DFS wagers. And if you are a member over at Fantasy National, you have the power of all the analytic tools at your fingertips, and you don't have to listen to a bozo like me try to give you the insights. You will have everything that you need to make optimal plays. So go check out FantasyNational.com. You won't regret it. In the description to the video, there are links to all of the social media, my social media, my X, my Instagram, where I post research every week on the PGA Tour. That came out this Monday around the prior winners of the RSM and what few qualities they do share together among them all. So if you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, then give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my betting cards and my player exposures every week on the PGA Tour, and that'll be no different. That comes out this evening after the DFS Tactics show. So if you want to see my betting cards and the players that I'm most often using in my lineups in DFS, go give me a follow over at X. And then speaking of X, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. Highly suggest you go give him a follow and subscribe to that article. It is free to do so, by the way. And if you are a subscriber to his article, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday evening during the PGA Tour season, as he is gracious enough to host me over there, and we continue the DFS talk over in his Substack chat. So again, go show Gabe some support. Follow him over on social media. Subscribe to that article. It is free to do so. And then lastly, we are live. Chat is open. I want to hear from you all. Who is your winner this week at the RSM? What kind of lineups are you building? And of course, if you are watching live, I ask that you participate in the poll question, which I will post at the end of the intro here. But want to hear from you all. Who's your winner? Do you think the win's going to have a major effect? All of that good stuff. Looking forward to a fun and interactive final show for the 2023 calendar year. So let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2023 Fall FedEx RSM. And we are going to start, as we always do for a DFS Tactics show on a Wednesday evening, over at Windfinder. And I will post tonight's poll question, and a pretty interesting one in my opinion. Which player under 10% projected ownership, and that's according to Fantasy National, which player under 10% projected ownership is most intriguing? Your options, as I can only post 4 in a poll: Cameron Young, Justin Suh, Siwoo Kim, and Stefan Jaeger. So all 4 of those players are projected right now under 10% per Fantasy National. Which of those players is most intriguing in your opinion? Would love to hear what the community has to say. We look at the forecast for the RSM and St. Simons Island, Georgia this week, and it has changed considerably even throughout today. So the caveat that I will tell you seemingly every Wednesday when wind could be a factor is that if you have the luxury to stay up and get the next forecast update, which should be probably about 11 o'clock or 11:30 Eastern time if you have that luxury, or if you have the luxury to wake up early and check the forecast early in the morning, I'm going to highly suggest you do so. But if this is the final forecast that you have to go on, I see a little bit of an advantage here, but there's not a true AM/PM wave like most tournaments. The RSM is a 2-course rota, and the players are going to start teeing off around 8 a.m. and the final tee time is about 10:15 a.m. So there's no real AM or PM split. You're looking at course splits. The 2 courses here, Plantation and Seaside. Plantation plays fairly significantly easier than Seaside, especially if the wind is expected to be prevalent, and you see here it is, especially for Friday. Early in the week we saw that Thursday looked like it was going to get the wind. Friday is now the day that looks like it's going to get the wind. Plantation is significantly easier, especially in windy conditions. So I'm going to suggest to you that the favor is players that are playing the Plantation course on the windier day. A sub note here, thanks to Gabe for letting me know and then posting it on social media earlier this evening. At least last year, the Plantation course played to a full shot easier on the windier day than the players who played Seaside. So more cuts were made by the players who were playing the Plantation course, the easier course, on the harder day. So with that said, you see that tomorrow morning the wind looks fairly light, but does pick up throughout the afternoon. It's supposed to increase as the day goes on. So your favor tomorrow would be the earliest tee times. And I'm going to suggest that you target the early Seaside players tomorrow. And with that, I do not have these memorized, so I have them off to the side. But you see, I do have the tee times listed here for the tournament. Thursday Plantation, it's just getting cut off because I'm in a web page view. But Thursday Plantation, Thursday Seaside, Friday Plantation, Friday Seaside. Again, I don't have those memorized, so I do have that off to the side here. But the optimal tee times look to be the Thursday Seaside, Friday Plantation. Now, Friday Plantation looks like it's going to be very, very gusty regardless of the time of day that you're teeing off. However, there is some rain in the forecast on Friday, and that always presents the possibility of delays or maybe even a suspension of play to Saturday morning. And that's significant because the wind really, really dies down over the weekend. So you see Thursday, the wind's supposed to pick up continuously throughout the day. Friday looks very difficult, chilly, lots of gusty winds, but rain in the forecast, so it could lead to a suspension of play. And it is significant as I zoom out and take a look at the full weekend. You see very little wind in the forecast Saturday and Sunday. So if play does get suspended to Saturday, it looks like those players have a pretty significant advantage. And that's why I am giving you a pretty heavy favor of the players that are playing the earliest of early on Thursday over at Seaside, as generally speaking, they have a later tee time Friday over on Plantation, and there is a non-zero chance that the players in the afternoon, regardless if they're at Seaside or Plantation, could have their round suspended and moved to Saturday, which would give a big advantage. But either way, the Plantation course is easier. So that is how I see the favor, or which side of the draw has a favor with this forecast. Again, the caveat being I highly suggest that if you have the luxury to stay up late and get the updated forecast, or wake up early and get the updated forecast, that you do so. But with that, we will move to Fantasy National. And because of the amount of wind in Thursday and Friday's rounds, you see I have the moderate and windy filters selected going back to the beginning of 2022. The top players in windy conditions in the field this week: Chris Kirk, Cameron Young, Corey Connors, Billy Horschel, Brian Harmon, Scott Piercy, Keith Mitchell, Alex Noren, Alex Smalley, and Cameron Percy. Scroll down there a little bit to perhaps the top 30 or just outside of it. You got some more players like Adam Long and Kevin Yu, Scott Stallings, Ben Griffin, Ryan Armour, so on down. And then your bottom players, your worst performers in the wind in the past couple of years: Harry Higgs, Andrew Landry, Nick Watney, Jim Herman, Max McGreevy, Wesley Bryan, Brian Gay, Dylan Wu, Jason Duffner, Russell Knox. All of these players, and I'll scroll down to the bottom 30 or so. These are your worst performers in the wind the past couple of years. So give these guys a little bit of a downgrade, with a little bit of a caveat there that the wind is really supposed to die down Saturday and Sunday. So I don't think the tournament is going to play difficult overall, especially the weekend. I see the weekend getting very, very easy. Friday, depending on if there's a suspension of play or not, could be the roughest day with the rain and the gusty winds. But anyway, there's a look at your top wind performers. We've looked all week at short course performers and easy course performers. I've got those metrics in the mixed condition model. So instead of doing an overview or a review of that, let's just jump straight in to the mixed condition model. Good evening, P. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Hopefully you had a chance to check the replay last evening or throughout the last couple of days, and you're ready for the final event of the 2023 calendar year, the RSM. We're going to see if we can't win the final event, increase our bankroll as we move into Christmas, and then, of course, the 2024 PGA Tour season. But thanks again for jumping in chat. The mixed condition model that I've made for this week, I really broadened it, considering how poor I performed in last year's mixed condition model. We took a look at that Monday evening. So I have 10% in strokes gained approach. Even though it is mitigated here, this is still my bias. I prefer strokes gained approach players. If you wanted to drop this to 5%, I wouldn't argue with you too much on that. I just think that approach is going to still be a decent factor. And I put an extra 5% in here because I did not include proximity. And I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But 10% in strokes gained approach, 20% in TIF Eagle putting. Now this is going all the way back to 2019 just to get enough rounds for everybody in the field to make it statistically significant. But we saw all week how putting was the statistic across multiple years here at Sea Island Resort that contributes to upper echelon success. So 20% on TIF Eagle Bermuda. Those courses are Bay Hill, the Plantation course at Kapalua, Port Royal, which we don't get the putting statistics for, but we still get total performance, PGA National, the Honda Classic, and of course Sea Island and the RSM. So 20% there. 10% in opportunities gained on short courses. I just brought this from last year's mixed condition model, as this was the most predictive metric from last year's mixed condition model. And another reason why I felt comfortable not including proximity, these greens are large to average. They're definitely on the bigger end of the PGA Tour average. So proximity, I didn't feel great about any specific range of proximity or total proximity. And with this being a putting contest, I just want to see who gives themselves the most opportunities. And I use the short course filter, as both of these courses are short. 10% in opportunities gained, 15% in birdies or better gained when a round is easy to par. This might not be the optimal metric to use for Thursday and Friday, but we saw the wind finder forecast. The wind really dies down Saturday and Sunday. The players, I think, are going to go very, very low over the weekend, and birdies and eagles, a little bit less to an extent, are the main focal point here at the RSM. These courses are gettable, especially when the wind is down, so you're going to have to go low to win. 15% in birdies or better gained. 5% in fairways. I mentioned Monday night that I was going to be looking at this metric. Even though these fairways are easy to hit and they are very wide, players are going to be clubbing down anyway to hit these fairways, so you wouldn't think off the top of your head that fairways would be an important factor. But if players aren't finding the fairway, there is water on about 70% of the holes at Sea Island Resort. 13 over at Seaside, 10 over at Plantation. If the players aren't hitting the fairway, there's not a lot of rough here. They're just going to be finding the water. So I do want to put a little bit of emphasis into the guys who are going to be hitting fairways. I use the short course filter to try and simulate or emulate the fact that these players are going to be using irons and 3 woods, driving irons, whatnot, off these tees. If you wanted to use fairways gained in the wind, that I think would also be appropriate for the first 2 days. Now, looking for a full tournament, I don't think it was optimal because of the way the weekend forecast is. But 5% in fairways gained, 5% in total par 3s. They're just mitigated at Seaside for whatever reason. Even though there's only 2 par 5s, they're fairly mitigated. We've seen that over the years, par 3s just haven't contributed a whole lot in a broad sense to upper echelon performance. So only 5% in par 3s, where everything comes here at the RSM. Again, with this being a par 70, you have 12 par 4s, 10% in the 350 to 4 par 4s, and 15% in the 400 to 450 par 4s. 9 of your 12 par 4s fall into this range over at Seaside. And then over at Plantation, it's an even split 4 and 4. And that's why I have a little bit of extra percentage in this range of par 4s, since players are going to be playing the Plantation one of the 4 days, assuming they make the cut. So 25% in par 4s split between just these 2 ranges. We saw Monday night that these were the only 2 ranges that really garnered a lot of attention. And finally, to end the mixed condition model, 10% in par 5s, 550 to 600. Again, Monday night we saw that about 70% of your strokes gained in par 5s come from this range. So there's a look at the mixed condition model. Some areas that I could be weak. Again, I mentioned how if you wanted to look at different filters, say maybe fairways gained in the wind, maybe birdies are better gained on short courses, you can mix and match how you see. I do not see around the green being a big factor, except for maybe Friday with the gusty winds. So perhaps around the green could make a difference on that day. But again, with the weekend forecast being so calm, I didn't want to put a whole lot of emphasis onto Friday alone. I don't see off the tee playing a huge factor. Distance has really never played a factor, but if it does this year, it would be an outlier, but that could be something. But overall, this is how the RSM is played, especially since 2019. So with that, there's the look at the mixed condition model, the rankings for the RSM, the way I have it this week. And I will change the page view for you. My number 1 player in my rankings this week is JT Poston. Chesson Hadley, number 2. Chris Kirk, Eric Cole, and Dylan Wu round out my top 5. Brian Harmon, Sam Ryder, Russell Henley, Brendan Todd, and Alex Noren round out my top 10. A quick reminder, this will be a reminder for you, P. But so bear with me, and for your information, if you are a new viewer, the way I do my rankings is on 3 kind of numerical values. I do not factor in tee times into my rankings on Microsoft Excel. I do that in the background when I'm starting to create my lineups. My rankings are a numerical value based on 3 factors. The FNGC rank, which is the numerical value that Fantasy National gives based on, you know, the metrics, the filters, and the percentage that I've put into that mixed condition model for that stat. Course value, which is an attempt to give a player a numerical value on how well they have played that specific course the past 5 years. The lower the number, the better. And then percent owned, we are playing DFS. We're trying to find unique options. So percent owned is also a factor in my rankings. So just for your all's information, so when I say somebody has a really bad tee time and they, you know, still rate out 5th, I'm still going to be a little wary of their tee time. And I do that on my own consideration when I'm making lineups outside of the show. So anyway, there's a look at my top 10. Look, there's a couple of players here that don't have a bad statistic. JT Poston, and I mentioned how this course kind of fits JT Poston. You think JT Poston, you think short courses, you think easy courses. He's been pretty good on Tiff Eagle Bermuda, top 10. Birdies are better when it's easy. 3rd in approach in this field. He does not have a red statistic. In fact, the worst statistic he has in these par 5s, 47th. So a very clear number 1 analytically, getting hurt a little bit by the percent owned, but not enough to move him out of the number 1 spot. This makes a lot of sense for JT Poston. Another player that doesn't have any poor metrics, he does have 1 middling, is Eric Cole. You see him 2nd by the FNGC rank. He is getting hurt quite a bit by his percent owned. He is the most projected owned player in or on the slate this week. Top 20 in putting on this surface. 3rd in birdies or better gained. His 1 mediocre statistic or fairways could come back to haunt him a little bit, but he has been so very good otherwise that I see this being a pretty good fit for Eric Cole. And then 2 other players, that don't have a red or pink or bad statistic. Brian Harmon, you see his worst there is 74th. Sam Ryder does not have 1, but he's got several that are pretty mediocre there. And Russell Henley, and that's his worst. So a few players that don't have any extremely poor metrics, but a couple that are mediocre. JT Poston is really the only one that is good to great to maybe even elite for this field in terms of every single metric. Otherwise, not a whole lot of surprise here. I've mentioned how I've been high on Chesson Hadley all week. I'm going to be very high on Chesson Hadley, especially with the tee time, which we'll talk about. Chris Kirk is a local guy. He's generally played the RSM well. Just like Chesson Hadley and Eric Cole, his worst has been fairways gained on short courses. Maybe an issue, but he has essentially played this event very well. Dylan Wu is a little bit surprising, but since I don't have any wind metrics, that's where he would have really fallen off. Like top 8 or top 10 in this field on putting on this surface. Almost top 10 in birdies or better gained when it's easy. He just plays easy courses well, and both of these courses are easy. He is going to be one of the players that I will lose to if they don't play well. I'm going to use a lot of Dylan Wu, hoping he makes the cut because of the amount of wind in the forecast. This is my home run play because I think if he makes the weekend, he's going to have a huge weekend with how easy it's projected to be. So quite a bit of risk that I'm taking there. I really like Dylan Wu, Brian Harmon, Sam Ryder. Perhaps a little bit surprising, but look, he's a good putter on this surface as well. The number 1 strokes gained approach player in this field the last 24 rounds. Russell Henley, number 1 in these very prevalent par 4s, 400 to 450. Brendan Todd was always going to rise because he is one of the best putters on specifically this surface, putting in general, but especially this surface. Alex Noren has been in really, really good form lately. It's not a lot of surprise there. All right, with that, let's sort on the price board, get a feel for where our fellow contestants are going in the various areas of the price board and see where we might want to pivot around them. In the 10Ks, in the 5 digits, we only have 3 players. Ludwig Åberg, Cameron Young, and Brian Harman, separated by $300 each. You see Cameron Young, at least according to Fantasy National, is getting squeezed in ownership. He has only played this event once, but he played it pretty darn well. It was a top 30. He's good going low, especially when it's easy. Now, his irons have not been very good. He's also not particularly adept, especially on these very short par 4s. So that does give you a little bit of concern. His big thing, again, is just like quite a few players. Is he going to hit enough fairways to keep himself in contention? 5.5% on a very talented player is very appealing. I'm looking forward to having Gabe jump in chat here a little bit later as he uses a few other sources other than Fantasy National for his ownership projections. So I'm wanting to hear what he sees for Cameron Young. But at 5.5%, I would think Cameron Young is pretty darn appealing. Åberg makes quite a bit of sense, but I still have a little bit of concern. His irons still haven't been great. He has played this event once, and it wasn't very good. Now, it's only one time. It's a small sample size, but it did not go well for him. And just like Cameron Young, he is also not particularly great at the very short par 4s. Now, you see, per Fantasy National, just based on analytics, Ludwig Åberg with a decent advantage over Cameron Young in terms of just purely by the numbers. But this is a play on the ownership, which I think is going to be a little bit higher. And again, Cameron Young being so unique and a very talented player who has played this event decently in the past, I think I'm going to be willing to take that chance on Cameron Young. Brian Harman, nothing wrong with him, but I think he's going to be fairly popular. I think he's got a pretty high floor, pretty safe play, but I don't think he's going to win the tournament. I don't think he's going to win you any DFS contests because I think he is going to be pretty popular. So in the 10Ks, a lot of it to do with the ownership. I'm going to go Cameron Young. I will, make this kind of the start of the players that if they don't play well, I will lose, along with Dylan Wu, who we'll get to in the 7Ks. But if Cameron Young doesn't play well, I'll lose. I just see him getting squeezed in ownership. He's played this course before. He's not atrocious on the surface. I kind of like Cameron Young. I'll make Brian Harman second. I do think it's a safe play. High floor. I think it's a fairly capped ceiling. And I'll make Åberg third in the 10Ks. Only because of the ownership. I think it's going to be a little bit higher. Yeah, he did not play well the one time he has played this. So take that for what it's worth. Moving into the 9Ks, Corey Connors, Russell Henley, Alex Noren, JT Poston, Justin Suh, Siwoo Kim, and Eric Cole. We have a whole lot of projected ownership in this area of the price board in the 9K, so it looks like, at least according to Fantasy National, a lot of our fellow contestants are going with balanced builds. Now, Justin Suh and Siwoo Kim are getting squeezed a little bit, but for the most part, this is where a lot of our fellow contestants are going. Our most projected owned player, Eric Cole, our, I believe, second and third, unless there's somebody that's 19%. No, so second and third projected owned players, Russell Henley, JT Poston, again, probably for good reason here, especially JT Poston. This feels like a JT Poston course. Talked about him, how he doesn't have even a mediocre statistic. They're all good to great and even elite for this field. Russell Henley, local guy, very accurate. Number one in these 400 to 450 par fours, makes a whole lot of sense. So a couple of chalky plays that I won't be able to get away from, but I will try to limit my use of them because of how popular they seem to be in the slate. Corey Connors has not prevented him from playing well at this course. He is 3 for 3. He has played pretty darn well here. Average finish, I believe, about 28th. But he does not putt this surface well. So if you want to fade Corey Connors, that would be your reason for it. But he has had decent amounts of success here. 3 for 3, average finish inside the top 30. The only other player that's getting some mention or some love in the 9Ks we haven't talked about, Alex Noren. He's in very good form. I wasn't very high on him last week, and he was second in my rankings. He finished the second in the tournament. It's the same kind of deal. He doesn't give himself a lot of opportunities on short courses. He isn't the greatest on these par fives. But he proved me wrong last week, so this is probably a situation where I'm probably going to use a little bit more Alex Noren. Kind of a reactionary week from last week. And looking at tee times here, I am seeing that Eric Cole starts on the Plantation course on Thursday. He does play Seaside on Friday, which you don't like, but his tee time is fairly late, so he does get the benefit there in that regard. Some other notable tee times, for example, I was targeting the earliest of early on Thursday Seaside because they're going to generally be teeing off late on the easier course, the Plantation, for Friday. Some of those players that are in the upper tier or upper echelon of the price board, Matt Kuchar we'll talk about here in the 8Ks. Stefan Jaeger's in the 8Ks. Really, a lot of these players have non-optimal tee times. I'm going to skip back and go up to the 10Ks for a second. So Ludwig Aubert starts on the Plantation course, which is not what you want. He starts on the Plantation course tomorrow, fairly early, with Cameron Young and with Corey Connors. So a feature group there. They start on the Plantation very early, so if they don't go low tomorrow, I see them being in a bit of a struggle as they will go to Seaside. They are later in the day at Seaside on Friday, but they are at Seaside, so that could be an issue for those three. Let's see, Brian Harmon, the only other 10K. And again, I don't have these memorized, so I am looking here. So Brian Harmon also starts on the Plantation course, so he'll move to Seaside on Friday. He is in the group after Corey Connors, Cameron Young, and Ludwig Aubert, so not optimal by any means. So with the 10s and the 9s not seemingly having the best of draws, let's move down to the 8s where a couple of these players are or seemingly have the better end of the draw. In the 8Ks, let's see, I mentioned how Matt Kuchar has a really good draw. He starts early over on Seaside tomorrow, which means he'll get Plantation and late. Luke List in the 8Ks, also teeing off fairly early on or at Seaside tomorrow, which means he gets Plantation on Friday. Yeah, that's really about it. A lot of the other players that are teeing off early on Seaside tomorrow are in the 7s and even the 6s. In the 8Ks, I really like Denny McCarthy. He's played very well here. The number one putter probably in the world, but especially on this surface. Also number 2 at these 400 to 450 par 4s. Just really likes this length of par 4. His tee time just very quickly, since I am so high on him. Denny McCarthy is... There he is. So he is at Seaside early on Friday. You don't like that. So that means he's probably pretty late in the day. Yeah. So he's late in the day tomorrow at Plantation. So he's got one of the more rough tee times. Don't love it, but again, with the short game prowess, number 1 putter, I still like McCarthy. Let's see. Elsewhere in the 8Ks, again, Kuchar's got a very good tee time. Jaeger, kind of interesting. He's got a pretty good draw, I would say. He is playing early on Plantation, but he does get Seaside later in the day on Friday. Again, potential for suspension, washout, and Jaeger's been okay. He's looking like he's getting squeezed a little bit in the 8Ks. Adams Vincent, your defending champion. I understand, but again, I just am not in love with the Adams Vincent. I'm just not there. He's played fairly well. He gets Plantation on Friday, which you like, but he's not particularly a good putter on this surface, although he putt extremely well last year. I think it was just probably a good week. He's not particularly great at birdies or better gained either. I don't know if it was a fluke win, but I just think he had a very good week last year, excuse me. So I'm going to have to say Adams Vincent's a fade. Luke List, even though he's pretty low owned, he's got a very good tee time, or good half of the draw. Oh man, that putter scares me in a tournament where putting is the be all end all. Don't think I can get there. Batia, for his lack of putting prowess, non-existent putting prowess, Akshay Batia is in a decent spot, if I recall. So he's at Plantation tomorrow, and then he is early at Seaside on Friday. So I was mistaken. He's not in a great spot. The rest of the show won't be able to type. Good luck this week. I'll be picking my buddy with Webb at the Pro-Am. What a lucky. Yeah, that I am lucky. As I mentioned, there aren't enough words in the dictionary that would accurately describe my jealousy. But P, thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Good luck with all your contests. And appreciate you tuning in, as you always do. I will definitely I will have some shows throughout November and December. So, keep up with me on social media. But good luck this week. And we'll see if we can't find our optimal plays to win the final week of 2023. Let's see. Elsewhere in the 8Ks, Billy Horschel might be somewhat interesting. He butts Bermuda Billy. But he's more of a grinder. And especially with the way the weekend's supposed to be, he's going to have to go low. I don't know how I feel about Billy Horschel. So I'm actually not doing a whole lot in the 8Ks, especially with some of these guys not having optimal tee times. Batia, not an optimal tee time. McCarthy, not an optimal tee time. Kuchar has a good one. I could probably see myself squeezing in a lineup or two. Jaeger, an okay draw. Can see myself using him a little bit. But I am off of Vincent. I understand the love being the defending champion, but I'm just not there. Moving into the upper sevens. Let's see. Chesson Hadley, I love. He's getting a little bit of attention, but I love Chesson Hadley especially. Whoops, sorry, I meant to be on this one. Chesson Hadley has one of the better tee times you could ask for. He starts tomorrow early on Seaside, meaning he plays late at the Plantation course on Friday. Love that. Love that combination there. Elsewhere here in the 7Ks, Brandon Wu has a pretty darn good tee time. I thought he was in the 7s. Yeah, he's the lower 7s. Apologies. We'll get to him. Chesson Hadley has a good tee time. JJ Spawn, is he in the... Yeah, he's right at 8,000. So he has a pretty good tee time as well, starting fairly early tomorrow over on Seaside, and then moving to Plantation a little bit later in the day. Like Chesson Hadley, Chris Kurt, also somebody that I am going to gravitate a little bit, especially if this is accurate in terms of projected ownership. Very good putter. He's performed well here in the past. Don't mind Chris Kirk. Let's see. If you want to back Vajegas, great. He like I mentioned Monday to Darnell, he never really rates out well for me. You see the putter on the measured rounds on Tiff Eagle, they're kind of mediocre. Now he has gone very low when it's easy. He's playing well right now, but last week, great story. I think it might be a little bit of an aberration, maybe just a good week, because he is not good at these 400, 450 par 4s. His irons haven't been all that great. Granted, we don't have the measured rounds from Port Royal. Taylor Pendrith, your most popular play in the upper sevens. Another player that I really, really wanted to gravitate towards, but that's a lot of ownership for a player that can get real wayward real quick. And if you're wayward here, you're going to be racking up some penalty strokes. That said, hasn't prevented him from playing well here before. So maybe the fact that he doesn't have the driver in hand is a plus for him. I like Taylor Pendrith, the player. I don't like that ownership at all. And Taylor Pendrith has a decent draw. He starts with Seaside fairly late, meaning he'll be playing fairly early on Plantation on Friday, which you'd want him to play Plantation, but you want him to play him later. So a little bit of good, a little bit of bad there. Montgomery, good putter. Generally plays easy courses well. He's just not in any kind of form at all. But this would feel like a good Taylor Montgomery course. Matty Schmid, somebody that I was keyed in on fairly early this week after his really good performance down in Bermuda. Loves this range of par 4s. Fifth, 400 to 450. Decent, going low when it's easy. Not the best putter on this surface, so I'll be using a little bit of Matty Schmid. I'm going to try not to get too crazy with it, because if memory serves, I don't think he had a very good draw. So he's extremely late at the Plantation course tomorrow, which means he'll be early at Seaside. That's probably about the worst draw you could have. So again, not in love with that, but I do like the player. Moving into these low sevens, I mentioned Brandon Wu has a very good tee time. Someone to think about. Ryan Palmer, especially if he makes the cut. The easier it is, the more you think about Ryan Palmer. Top 15, birdies are better when it's easy to par, and he never, ever seems to get a lot of attention. He's always generally pretty darn unique. Some other players here that have some pretty darn good tee times. let's see, Russell Knox. Thought he was 7Ks. He might be upper 6s. Brandon Wu, I mentioned. Right, there's Ryan Palmer. So he is very early tomorrow at Seaside and then fairly late at Plantation on Friday. You'll love that. He's actually in the same group with Chesson Hadley. You know how much I love Chesson Hadley. So I'm going to have probably quite a bit of Ryan Palmer. Let's see. Luke List, I've mentioned. JJ Spawn, Matt Kuchar, Adam Schenk. I don't think we've talked about. No, because he's right here. Okay, I would much prefer him on bent. I think that's his best surface. The irons have been very good. Now, this is stretching back to when he was playing well at the end of the PGA Tour season last season, and in the summer. So the rounds are going a little bit further back than some of these guys. Probably not the best with the opportunities either. Much more of a short game player. But something to think about. He's got a decent tee time, kind of middle of the day or middle of the stack of tee times over at Seaside tomorrow, and then again middle of the rounds for the Plantation on Friday. So you can think about Adam Schenk. He's got a decent draw seemingly. I like Sam Ryder. I think he might be a little bit too popular, but I do like Sam Ryder. Number 1 in irons here, or number 1 iron player in the field this week. The last 24 rounds, 5th in these par 4s, 400, 450. You see a very good putter on this surface. Sam Ryder is his tee time not looking the best as I'm still scrolling. Yeah, so he is late tomorrow at Seaside. So, he does get Plantation early-ish Friday. Okay. Much rather have him be on Plantation Friday than Seaside. So, kind of like Sam Ryder as well. And then in the lower parts of the 7Ks, look, Webb Simpson, he's played this event extremely well. He doesn't have a lot of form, or any form, but he does have this best course value. He is the strokes gained total leader the past 5 years here. I always will mention Webb Simpson at the RSM. This is just a very, very good course for Webb Simpson. Take a look if you're willing to take that chance. Ryan Moore played really well last week. Granted, he's not supposedly a very good putter on this surface. He is very early tomorrow, which you like, but he's over at Plantation tomorrow, so he's going to have to get off to a very, very fast start. Something to think about. In the bottom 7s, I'm looking at Dylan Wu. Yes, the tee time is not optimal by any means, but good putter on the surface. Goes low when it's easy. Almost top 20 in the most prevalent length of par 4s here. I like Dylan Wu. He's one of the 3 or 4 players that if they don't play well, I won't have a very good week. Moving into the 6s, there's quite a few players that have very good tee times in this price range, in the 6Ks. I'm going to throw out a couple of names at you. First one being, again, Carson Young. I'm backing him again this week. Good putter on the surface. Top 30 or top 40 and birdies are better gained. Surprisingly, he actually is another one of these players that doesn't have a bad statistic, a pink or a red statistic. He just doesn't have anything truly elite. 62nd there, a 77th. All of his are just kind of good, with the exception of the par 3s here, which he is 3rd, but they're fairly mitigated. Carson Young actually has a very, very ideal tee time. He tees off very early tomorrow over at Seaside, and then is fairly late at Plantation on Friday. So a great combination there, and rates out well regardless of the tee time. So I'm going to be using quite a bit of Carson Young. Also take a look at Grayson Sigg. Decent putter on the surface. Now he's going to have to go low, which he hasn't generally been the best at, especially when it's easy. But he gives himself quite a few opportunities, and the putter isn't atrocious enough to just make that point moot. So I do like Grayson Sigg in that regard. Also pretty darn good at these short par fours, the extremely short par fours. Hits plenty of fairways. He's not going to take himself out of the tournament or out of a hole. Kind of like Grayson Sigg this week. So him and Carson Young is kind of where I'm going in the 6Ks, trying not to go too much further down, especially since they're getting a little bit of love at that spot at 6.5% and 7%. Will Gordon also getting quite a bit of attention. He's played this tournament very well, but you see where he rates out for me, 106th. He hasn't been particularly good on the surface, and the prevalent length of par fours haven't been great. One other name that I do want to give you all, trying to find him. I mentioned him casually last week, and he performed pretty darn well. Take a look at Doc Redman. Goes low when it's easy. He much prefers easy courses. Pretty darn good putter. Now, he doesn't give himself a lot of opportunities, which could be an issue, but decent enough at the length of par fours. Irons, I think they're going to be okay. Doc Redman also has not an ideal tee time, but it's not horrible. He is the last tee time tomorrow over at Seaside. So, again, you would prefer him to be early, not late, but he does get Plantation kind of midway through the round Friday. So, I don't hate that. That's a little bit more of a play on the draw that he's in as opposed to the player in general. So there's a look at the price board where our fellow contestants seem to be going, some possible pivots there. Let's start making some lineups. We're going to start with tiers contests for those who play tiers, and then we'll get into these classic lineups. For the players who play tiers, we've got 3 players: Ludwig Aubert, Cameron Young, and Brian Harman. Aubert and Young have the same exact tee time. It is not a good one. They're playing at Plantation tomorrow and then going over to Seaside on Friday. So you don't like that. Harman has a similar tee time, but he is later in the day, which gives him more of a chance at that round suspension or whatnot. Cameron Young would be the play if you are not scared of his irons and the fact that he could just lose by taking himself out of a hole and the tournament with the fact that he doesn't hit a lot of fairways. I think Aubert is going to be the most common play or the most popular play in Tier 1. For me, give me Brian Harman. I think it's a safe play. I think the upside is pretty capped, especially in a tiers contest. But I think I'll take Brian Harman, making sure I'm just not immediately eliminated in the tiers contest, as Cameron Young could eliminate you with the fact that he just doesn't hit a lot of fairways. So give me Brian Harman. If you aren't scared of that, take Cameron Young, but give me Brian Harman. Tier 2, we have Corey Connors, Russell Henley, Alex Noren, JT Poston, and Siwoo Kim. Henley's probably the most chalky play. JT Poston, my number 1 player. I'm probably going to have to pick him, even if he is one of the more popular players in this tier. I do have a little bit of concern with Corey Connors, just like just like Cameron Young, and how he could take himself out of the tournament with fairways. I understand Corey Connors has played well here, but he could take himself out with that putter. He has not put this surface well. So give me JT Poston, probably pretty darn chalky. Alex Noren is a worthy consideration as well, but I'm going to start with Harman and Poston in this tiers construction. Tier 3, Justin Suh, Eric Cole, Matt Kuchar, Stefan Jaeger, and Adam Svensson. Ugh. I should just probably take Eric Cole even though he is so extremely chalky. Kuchar's got the best tee time of these guys. Jaeger's kind of interesting, but I think Eric away the best player in this tier. So give me Eric Cole in tier 3. Tier 4, McCarthy, Brendan Todd, Billy Horschel, Luke List, Keith Mitchell, Akshay Bhatia, and Alex Smalley. Yeah, I just don't care. I'll take McCarthy. Just give me McCarthy. I'm very, very high on McCarthy this week. Tier 5, JJ Spawn, Chesson Hadley, Chris Kirk, Harris English, Davis Thompson, Thomas Dietrich, and Camilo Villegas. Again, a couple of decent considerations in here. Chris Kirk. Spawn's actually got a pretty advantageous draw. But give me Chesson Hadley. He's got one of the best draws in the tournament this week, and I've been targeting Chesson Hadley quite a bit this week already, so I'll take Hadley. And then lastly in tier 6, Ryan Moore, Lonto Griffin, Dylan Wu, Peter Quest, Kevin Streelman, and Sam Stevens. Again, pretty easy. I'm going to take Dylan Wu in tier 6. I don't think Ryan Moore is a bad consideration at all, but I'm just going to go with Dylan Wu. So pretty unique at the bottom of this construction of tiers, except for maybe Hadley, hoping he's a little bit more unique than what is projected here. And then tier 4 with McCarthy, I'm hoping to have a little bit of uniqueness off of Brennan Todd and Billy Horschel and Bhatia. So if you're going to play multiple tiers lineups, I think I would actually kind of mix and match around both Cameron Young and Brian Harman. Maybe you take Connors a time or two, more so Poston, and then just for me, I am going to hammer Hadley. I'm going to hammer Dylan Wu, and mostly hammer Denny McCarthy tier 4. Although I'm sure I'd probably have Bhatia maybe a time. Brendan Todd's off completely a worthwhile inclusion in a tier lineup due to his putting, but I'd be mostly McCarthy. So this construction, I will go Cameron Young, JT Poston, Eric Cole, Denny McCarthy, Chesson Hadley, and Dylan Wu. We'll move to Classic in these big GPP contests, see how we can maneuver around all the chalk that is getting played right now. In fact, I'm actually probably not even going to make a Stars and Scrubs lineup, as that seems to be the contrarian play. So I don't think there are going to be very many Stars and Scrubs lineups in your big GPPs. At least chalky Stars and Scrubs. So let's start this chalky lineup with Russell Henley. Of course, Eric Cole is in here, the number 1 projected owned player. You see that you still have, close to 8,000 per player, and that's the beauty of building these balanced lineups to start. It's giving you a lot of maneuverability throughout the price board. Having said that, they're using a lot of 8K players that I'm just not in love with in a big GPP. For example, Adam Svensson. I'm not going to be using much of Adam Svensson, if at all. It might be a full fade. Just not a big believer in Adam Svensson. Moving further on down here, you got Chesson Hadley at 79, getting a lot of attention. Taylor Pendrith at 76 and 16%, getting a whole lot of attention as well. It's leaving our fellow contestants about 7,500 per player. Going to be leaving a little bit of money on the table, but Mark Hubbard is seemingly where they are bottoming out. And then this is Ben Griffin at 10.5%. So there's a look at a pretty chalky looking balanced lineup here. Starting Henley, Eric Cole, going to Svensson and Pendrith. Pendrith, who I like, I just don't like his ownership. Ben Griffin and Mark Hubbard, right around the 16%. You can probably get a little bit more chalky I'm going to try and build a different looking kind of lineup here. Another balanced lineup because I just don't see stars and scrubs being built. So there's one construction. If we do a different construction, let's use JT Poston in this one. Of course, it's still going to be Eric Cole, the most projected owned player. We used Vincent last time. Let's use Todd. He's getting a little bit less of a look than Svensson, but still pretty popular in his own right. This one I will throw in Chesson Hadley in, even though I'm really, really liking Chesson Hadley. I'm definitely going to be using Chesson Hadley. He is still getting quite a bit of attention. Davis Thompson at 78 might be too much. Yeah, because I was trying to bottom out at Pendrith. Dang it. Well, let's just go Pendrith and Taylor Pendrith. This leaves them 77. You've got a couple of players getting a little bit of attention down in the very bottom half of the sevens. Again, Mark Hubbard, 74. Sam Ryder at 72. I'm going to use Ryan Moore in this one in case they go a tad bit lower. We'll go Ryan Moore at 71. Now you can move this 600 around. You know, maybe they come off of Chesson Hadley, go up to maybe a JJ Spawn. They move Poston up to Russell Henley. Cole would still get played. Brendan Todd's, Vincent, maybe McCarthy. But you see, those are the types of lineups that are getting built pretty prevalently in these big GPP, seemingly. Looking like a couple of 9s, maybe a 10 and a 9, moving into an 8, 2 8s, and then your mid and low 7. So how are we going to maneuver around this? Well, I'll start with balanced lineups in case that is where you're standing. Let me pull up the tee times here. Again, Chesson Hadley is going to be used for me at 79. He's just one of the better tee times in the draw. But if you're trying to get pretty unique, it's going to be difficult, especially since I like Eric Cole, I like Poston. But you could use Alex Noren, who's in pretty darn good form right now. Alex Noren, he starts at Plantation, so then he'll move to Seaside on Friday. Not great, but he's got a middle of the round tee time both days, so it could be worse, could be better. But he's also in pretty good form, 10th in my rankings. Again, number 2 at these length of par 4s. 10th, and birdies are better when it's easy. So if he can, quite literally weather the draw that he's in, it sets up well for him on the weekend. So you're picking up a little bit of uniqueness there. And then, moving on down, Stefan Jaeger, Matt Kuchar, if you want to play the tee time or the favorable draw. Matt Kuchar has one of the better draws of the tournament. I don't hate this for Kuchar, even though he doesn't rate out extremely well. I still think he'll be serviceable. You can probably squeeze in another 8 in here, whether that's Jaeger, McCarthy. You move on down, maybe Akshay Bhatia. I'll use Denny McCarthy. Just really, really high on Denny McCarthy this week. And then moving into the upper 7s, this would be Chesson Hadley. Chris Kirk, I think, will be pretty darn good this week as well. You don't need length at all. He's going to have to hit more fairways, obviously, but top 10 in opportunities gained. And the fact that he putts this surface so very, very well, he is local. I think Chris Kirk's going to be pretty darn good, so I'll throw him in this balanced build, get some uniqueness off of the others around his area, like Chesson Hadley, like Spawn, like Thompson. Gives us 7,600. I really like Pendrith, but way too much ownership, I think. I mentioned Matty Schmid, who's coming off a very good performance at Bermuda and how he fits for this course. Now, he has not played this event very well, but this event's pretty volatile with all the water in play. Still think it's a good fit. Very good, very adept at the length of par fours here. Top 25. Birdies are better when it's easy. He also really likes the length of par fives. I don't hate Matty Schmid. And then to end this balance construction off, you can look at a couple of different places. Sam Ryder wouldn't be terrible. I mentioned Adam Shank. Mark Hubbard, although he's fairly popular. Let's go Doug Gim, a little bit scary just because of the putter. If you're not scared of the putter, maybe Doug Gim. He hasn't been atrocious at this tournament. What's his tee time? Doug Gim. I felt like his was pretty late. About middle of the day over at Plantation tomorrow, so that means it gets a middling-ish tee time for Seaside on Friday. Not fantastic, but very good at these length of par fours. I'm trying to save Ryan Palmer for the Stars and Scrubs lineup, but it might be Ryan Palmer in this. If we throw Taylor Pendrith in this, how chalky does this make it? Because that's the exact perfect fit. I do like the player. Again, it's a little bit higher than what you would like to see if you're trying to be contrarian. Again, the ownership is just spiking due to Taylor Pendrith and the fact that he's the most projected owned player in the mid sevens by a significant margin. You can come off of this ownership pretty easily, but that gives you an idea on some of the players that you can gravitate towards as some pivots off of the chalky plays in their area. Again, Noren, Kuchar has an excellent tee time or an excellent draw, so that's more of a play on the draw as opposed to the player. I think Chris Kirk's very, very useful this week. But the way I've been trying to go contrarian. I'm going to go Stars and Scrubs. I'm going to be using Cameron Young, especially if the ownerships are, correct per Fantasy National. Just a very unique player and a very talented player. So I'm going to go with Cameron Young. And I mentioned 2 6K plays. You absolutely don't have to go into the 6Ks this week if you don't want to. But I'm going to go with Cameron Young, and then I will bottom this team out. I'm going to go with Carson Young at 6'9", just to squeeze in a little bit more pricing. Good evening, Ray. Thanks for jumping in chat. Thoughts on Villegas? Look, it was a great story last week, but he never rates out well for me. I don't know what it is. He just never rates out well for me. He didn't rate out well last week. Now, this week, I believe he was 60th. There he is. So he rates 60th total. Very unique. But even for winning last week at Port Royal, which is the same exact surface, he hasn't putt Tiff Eagle all that great going back to 2019. Now, yes, he has been going very low when it's easy. You like that. But 9 of the 12 par 4s at Seaside, which is the course they will play 3 of the 4 days, 9 of the 12 par 4s fall from 400 to 450. You see the performance there. It's not great. His irons haven't been great. All of this with the caveat that we don't get the strokes gained data from Port Royal and the Bermuda Championship. It was a great story. I think it was a little bit of an aberration. He just never rates out well for me. I don't see the harm, especially if he is indeed under 5%. I don't see the harm in throwing him in a lineup. But elsewhere around his price, seeing Cameron Young at 17%. Holy smokes, it's still lower than everybody else in the range, though. If Cameron Young is indeed at 17%, that would really limit how much I would be high on Cameron Young. But thanks for jumping in chat, Gabe. Much appreciated. To finish the thought on Camilo Villegas, other players in his area that I'm gravitating more towards, Like Chris Kirk, if you can find 300, he seems to be fairly unique. I absolutely love Chesson Hadley this week. He's got one of the best draws, in my opinion. If you can't find that amount of money, take a look at Matty Schmid, also coming off a very successful Bermuda Championship ray. Matty Schmid, a tad bit better putter on that surface. Loves the length of par fours, whereas Camilo Villegas has really struggled at that length of par fours. Still goes low enough, when it's easy. I just really like Matty Schmid this week. So I'm at different places around Villegas's price. But with the apparent lack of ownership, I can understand it. And he's been playing great. There's no doubt about that. But thanks to Gabe for letting me know that, or letting chat and the community know that Cameron Young, apparently Fantasy National is much lower on Cameron Young than the rest of the prognosticators, I guess is the best way to say that. But even so, I'll just run with Cameron Young on this team for this construction. We'll go Cameron Young. Again, this would be like an Alex Noren. I think Russell Henley is going to be too popular. JT Poston's probably going to be too popular. You can try to squeeze in a Brian Harmon. I don't love it because there's quite a few players in the upper sevens that I like. So instead, Corey Connors. This is going to be pretty darn chalky, but I'm just going to go with Poston. He is the number one player in my rankings. This just is a JT Poston type course, short and easy. I've mentioned throughout the majority of the night, I'm kind of skipping the 8Ks. I'm using my fair share of Denny McCarthy if I'm in this area, but with this current construction, I'm just going to skip the 8Ks. I'll go with Chesson Hadley at 79. There's absolutely no issue with going Chris Kirk either. Leaves us 7,700 per player. Again, this is Matty Schmid I've used quite a bit, so I'm trying to get away from there. This could easily be a Camilo Villegas for you, Ray. And you're still at that 76. You're probably looking at a unique lineup, or mostly a unique lineup, thanks to Carson Young, if you're willing to drop into the 6Ks. Hadley, I'm hoping, is a little bit more unique than this, but even if he's not, Camilo Villegas would be fine. 7,600 is Taylor Pendrith, Matty Schmid, Adam Long, who I will give a casual mention to, also rated out, decently okay. You also have Adam Schenk, who wouldn't be terrible, I don't think. Leaving a couple hundred on the table. There's a look at a Stars and Scrubs-ish kind of lineup that looking like it's going to be pretty contrarian. Another way you can go about this, I used Carson Young there. This time I'll use Grayson Sigg. I'm a little bit higher on Carson Young, but Grayson Sigg I like quite a bit as well. This is Dylan Wu, Ryan Palmer, and then you have all of this money up top that you can maneuver how you want. Maybe you're pretty high on Obear. I'm not particularly, but maybe you are. Or maybe you want to squeeze in the 3 9s, the Connors, Henley, Poston. Maybe that's the Stars construction that you want to go with. That's, well, it would help if I did. There's your perfect 50,000 even. And 3 players in the bottom half of the 7s that I am really, really high on. Ryan Palmer, Dylan Wu. He doesn't have the greatest of tee times, but if he makes it to the weekend, I think it's a boat race, considering how easy it's the forecast is saying it's going to be over the weekend. You can also take a look at Brandon Wu. Don't hate that one either. But there's a look at a couple of different ways to maneuver around all of the chalk that is in the 9s and the 8s and Taylor Pendrith. But if there aren't any more questions, I'm going to end the show off there. As always, you can reach out to me on social media. If you have any last minute questions, feel free to leave a comment. If you have a question, I will do my best to answer that before lineups lock early tomorrow. And a reminder, I'm going to be over in Gabe's Substack chat. And the only way you're going to be able to join us is if you are a subscriber to his article. It is free to do so, by the way. So go show Gabe some support. It is a fantastic article. It gets you ready for the week at hand. Granted, this is the last article of the 2023 season, but you don't want to be left behind starting out 2024. So we're going to continue the DFS talk over in his Substack chat. I want to thank P and Ray and Gabe for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. And thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, and supports the channel. It's always appreciated. Love what I do. Taking an in-depth look at golf statistics from an data analyst and statistician's point of view, trying to give you optimal plays and optimal ways to think about your wagers every week, trying to win a little bit of money in the process. For all the wagers you made this week for the RSM, for all the DFS contests you play this week for the RSM, for this weekend, every weekend, and until the 2024 Tournament of Champions, may all your bets be profitable.